Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic.
I'm Barry P. Cook, and I'm here with another Reviewer's Log Supplemental, where I'm going to cover some things about the last episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds that I didn't cover in my initial review. Because since watching it and since discussing the episode in the comments with some of you, and since seeing other points brought up by other YouTubers, I wanted to talk about some things that happened in this episode that I think need to be mentioned. So, as we know, in episode 3, Ghosts of Illyria, the main plot of the episode was that the crew of the Enterprise was going a little crazy, trying to absorb as much light as possible after they were infected with some kind of light-borne illness that basically depleted their vitamin D, which I guess makes sense in a way because you need vitamin D. But what I don't understand is why they kept like they were trying to get to some of the crew members were trying to satisfy their need for vitamin D by exposing themselves to artificial light. And as far as I know, artificial light doesn't produce vitamin D. It doesn't deliver vitamin D. Only natural light does. So I don't know what that was about. Also, why was Hemmer affected? He's a subspecies. He's from a subspecies of the Andorians, from like a frozen type of planet. So I'm trying to imagine under what circumstances he would gravitate towards light or crave light or heat. You know, since another YouTuber, I think, pointed this out. It doesn't make sense. Also, is vitamin D a thing for his species? Like, would you know what I'm saying? Like, would he need vitamin D? Would not having vitamin D make him crazy? He's not human, right? So I didn't get that. So some other stuff is going on in this episode as well. For example, Pike and Spock are trapped on the planet, right? Because they can't beam up due to the ion storm. So how come they didn't use a shuttle? Why would they not have gone down in a shuttle to begin with? Because they knew the storm was approaching. Or why didn't they send a shuttle instead of beaming up originally? And why didn't they send a shuttle, certainly, once they knew there was a problem after they beamed up the first group from the away team, the landing party? Like, why did they just leave them there? Like, why didn't they send a shuttle down? Maybe they couldn't, but you would like them to explain, well, we can't send a shuttle because, and they never mention it. So it's like, what? Why didn't they send a shuttle down? Another thing that happens in the episode is there's a discussion of people being augmented and, you know, genetic manipulation. And of course, Khan comes up. La'an brings up Khan, or number 1 does when she's talking to La'an. And someone pointed out, how come when Khan is on the Enterprise, during the events of Space Seed, he never says anything about, I see that my descendant served on this vessel, or where is my descendant that's serving on this vessel, or anything like that. Now, at first, he's playing coy with who he is, but once the jig is up, he doesn't say anything, where you would think that it would have come up. Well, we know why it didn't, but it is weird, right? Now that they've put this character on the Enterprise, it's weird that there's no mention of it in Space Seed. And we know, of course, that Khan did read up on current events. He went through everything in the Starfleet database that was available to the public that wasn't classified. So, I mean, you'd think a guy like that, the first thing he's going to do is look up his descendants, right? So it's just dumb now that they have her on the ship. And, of course, the whole thing, Spock never mentions her. Never during Space Seed, during Star Trek 2, never mentions this crew member that he served with. So it's like, why did they put her on the show? Like, you know what I mean? Like, why don't they foresee these things and go, you know what? No, we're not going to do that. They really should do that more often. In a similar vein, we have, the events of the Menagerie, where the Telosians are talking about, they're trying to get Pike to mate with a woman, and they bring him different women from the ship, one of whom is number 1, and the Telosian is talking to him and going through the different qualities of the different women, and he mentions, number 1, he doesn't call her that obviously, but he talks about her and he lists various qualities, but he then lists strength as one of the qualities of the other women. this one has these qualities and this one has the qualities of strength and whatever. And it's not number one, yet number one is augmented. So even though she's older than the other woman, and the other woman is presumably more, stronger, is presumably stronger because she's a little younger, he doesn't mention the fact that number one, is augmented and has, superior abilities, and they would know that one way or another, right? Either from examining them or reading their minds, whatever. It doesn't come up, of course, because the storyline hadn't been invented. So, it begs the question, why do they invent the storyline now? Because it creates an incongruity. And this is exactly what I knew was going to happen. Look, I still like the show. I think it's really good. But this is exactly the kind of dumb stuff I knew was going to happen as soon as they did this show. That these little things were going to crop up. And it's like, why? Why would you open yourself up to that? It's just, I don't know. One other thing that happens in the episode too is we see that Uhura is living in a quarter. She has a living arrangement on the ship where she's living with other crew members. And in my review, I had said, oh, we never saw that depicted before, even though it makes sense because that's how things are on real ships in real life. And, that's probably how it would be on a starship. The lower ranking crew members probably bunk together, but I was incorrect. We have seen that in other live action shows, other live action Star Trek shows. So I was mistaken about that, but I had forgotten, but I wanted to clear that up. They have in fact shown that on the other shows as well, which is good because it creates a through line. It creates continuity where, a lot of time they're creating discontinuity. So I don't know, maybe it balances out, but anyway, it doesn't balance out. But anyway, that at least was in keeping with what we've seen before, so that's cool. The only other thing I want to talk about is in the end, of course, of this episode, we see that Dr. M'Benga has been storing his ill daughter in the pattern buffer. And, I didn't think anything of it at first. I was like, okay, well, we know that's possible. But it turns out that I had forgotten that when the Enterprise comes across Scotty having done it, in TNG, they're amazed that the idea of it, like, really, he stored himself in the pattern buffer for 80 years. So it wasn't something that was normal. And in fact, Scotty mentions that someone else that he stored in the pattern buffer before he stored himself didn't make it. And, that it was done by sort of Mickey Mousing the system. It wasn't something that the system could do as designed. And they don't mention that M'Benga somehow, jury-rigged it, that he plays it off like it's just a normal function of a transporter, and it isn't. Also, just narratively, why would he store her in the pattern buffer? Like why not keep her in medical stasis, And why didn't he just bring her out of the pattern buffer when they were updating the systems and then put her back in? I guess because he's hiding it, but why is he hiding it? Why is he hiding her? Hiding the fact that he's got her on board. Maybe something will come to light about that, but it was kind of weird because he does bring her out and talk to her. So why not just bring her out of the buffer so that they could do what they needed to do and then put her back in? I don't know. Why isn't she in medical stasis? It's just weird. It was a weird thing they did at the end. And at first I didn't think anything of it, but other people have brought up how it's inconsistent with what we saw in Relics and it doesn't really make sense from a narrative standpoint. So I wanted to come back and sort of say, yeah, it doesn't make sense. So there you go. Those are the only things I really wanted to point out since having watched the episode. So we can talk about this stuff in the comments and whatnot. The new episode airs on Thursday, or is released on Thursday. And I guess it's going to involve the Gorn, which again kind of messes with continuity. But there again, Enterprise messed that all up long before this series messed it up, because originally Kirk encounters the Gorn and no one had encountered them before, but then they showed up on Enterprise, which is why they shouldn't have done that prequel, one of the reasons anyway. So I don't know. But I'll be back with a review of episode 4 once it is released. For now, I'm going to take my leave, and until then, I wish you peace and long life.